Right, I'm going to need to see something a little bit different from Ange Postecoglou tomorrow. I'm going to need to see changes made in order for Spurs to beat Aston Villa and progress to the 5th round of the FA Cup. Ange Postecoglou has got a good record against Unai Emery, and Spurs are in a bad spot right now, but Villa are always a team that he's been able to get the better of. Victory in our last 2 games, victory in the game there at Villa Park last season, a 4-0 resounding game that we thought was going to define our season. We thought the battle for top 4 had been won, and obviously it didn't transpire that way. And even in the game that we lost to them at home last season, Spurs were the better team with a very depleted side. And we're going to go to Villa Park with a very depleted side still. But for me, it's about the decisions that Ange Postecoglou makes out wide and in midfield that could potentially define how this game goes for us. Villa have got new signings. They've got an energised sense of belief with those new players coming in. How many of them are actually going to play, we don't necessarily know. But we'll get into that. Welcome back to the Ben Bowman YouTube channel. Apologies for not making a video after Liverpool. It was just honestly... I did the Fighting Cock in the morning. I did my own podcast. I kind of got so much off of my chest, and I just felt so deflated from that game. And I apologise for that. I did post a lot of content on my TikTok, which you guys probably would have seen anyway, to be honest. So apologies for letting you down and not putting a video on here. I wasn't hiding from the defeat or anything like that. It was just a bit of a gut punch in terms of how it happened, but I did get a lot off my chest in those TikTok videos and the podcast and stuff as well. So if you listen to them or watch them, I do appreciate that. But apologies for not doing a more in-depth breakdown on here. And to be honest, I don't think you guys necessarily wanted that. But we're going to preview the Villa game because despite vibes being low, there is an opportunity here for Spurs. And like I said, Ange has got a good record against Villa. And I think Villa, the thing that worries me about this game is that I think in one-off kind of cup games, Villa have shown a real intensity in their defending and their desire to defend in the Champions League that has made them a really difficult team to beat. And I think they can kind of translate a lot of that into this game. Spurs can make the game a little bit more transitional and actually progress the ball out from the back, unlike we were able to do on Thursday night against Liverpool. Then we could have a little bit more joy here. And that's why I think Ange has got to be brave. I think he's got to be brave in this game and give the keys to Gray and to Bergvall in midfield. I think Danso and Davis are going to be this settled centre-back partnership until Romero and Van de Ven come back, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what is happening there. But I think for now, I would quite like this to be the base of Spurs' defence. Gray kind of coming in there as that 6. And what I like about it is that you've got bravery there, and you've got players who aren't afraid to kind of stand up to bigger occasions. And it's crazy that we're saying that about 2 teenagers. But Gray, I think this is the time to give him that run. I think it is the time to give him that run. I've seen enough now, I think, from Bentancur and Basuma. And I think what Spurs were unable to do against Liverpool on Thursday was, for that first, up until the goal that Cody Gakpo obviously scores on, 35 minutes or so, right? It was a constant wave of pressure, as you can kind of see from that momentum bar. It was constant from Liverpool. But in terms of defending the box, yes, we rode our luck at times. Yes, Kinski obviously tipped that one onto the bar from Salah. Davis and Danso were putting their bodies on the line. We were actually able to defend. And look, it always felt inevitable that we would concede. But it was that lack of ability to progress from midfield into that forward line that was why Tottenham really, really struggled in that game. Basuma, Bentancur especially all off it as those kind of senior players. Just a real lack of cohesion in there. And I think that Bergvall, you need that positivity because Villa, we know that, look, it's going to be a bit of a makeshift back four for Villa with Digne, Kamara kind of filling in for Mings and Torres at centre-back who are both injured at the moment. Konsa obviously kind of a staple of that defence, and Garcia, the new right-back that they've signed. You'd imagine that will be the back four, and obviously there is a chance for Tottenham to get at that with it being a little bit makeshift. With Villa really, really struggled actually against Wolves last weekend, especially in that first half. Villa, on transition, they kept getting turned over and they kept leaving space in behind. And Wolves, with the direct nature of like Guedes and with Cunha and Sarabia, they were able to kind of turn the ball over and create a lot of chances and get in behind Villa. So Tottenham, if they can just have that little bit more composure in midfield, because you know this front three, Villa have got such a great engine in terms of the heart of this midfield and like forward line. When you think about players like Ramsey, Rodgers, Onana and Tielemans, who I think will be the midfield pair tomorrow. In terms of the legs, Spurs, I think, have to factor that in. I think that's why Sarr probably has to play, just to give you that little bit of energy in there. And we'll come on to Kulusevski and Son in a minute and more in terms of what Spurs might do from out wide. Sorry, I've just thrown my pen on the floor. Out of outrage. I think Spurs have to factor that in, obviously. But you also need to factor in having that little bit of composure on the ball. And I spoke about this, actually, when I did my preview for the league game. Sorry that the setup's a little bit all over the place here. But when I did my preview for the league game back in November, where Spurs obviously beat Villa 4-1, I talked about Villa's defensive discipline kind of when they go into this low block and how you're going to need creativity to unlock that. And I think, obviously, in the Champions League, where they've kind of made themselves quite hard to beat, what they've done really well is kind of tuck in these wingers, as you can kind of see here. It might be McGinn on that right-hand side. It's probably going to be Ramsey on the left. What they kind of do is tuck in really well and provide defensive solidity, as we saw before the game. And I think that's why, or as I highlighted before the game a few months ago, and I said that's why you're going to need, I think, your Maddison's in there, your Kulusevski's in there potentially, just to have that little bit of creativity in midfield and just be a little bit more brave and take the game to Villa, because they will be really hard to beat. And trying to go round the side of them is going to be quite hard, or go round the back of them is going to be quite hard. And I think, again, they might kind of apply those similar tactics tomorrow. And Spurs have always had a bit more joy when the games have become a little bit more transitional and Villa do push up that little bit more, which they're going to do because they back themselves to be able to. They back themselves with the players like Onana, who can kind of cover so much ground. Rodgers, who covers so much ground. You know, it'll probably be Marlon through the middle. A lot of Villa fans were saying to me that Emery doesn't tend to chuck new signings in straight away. I know Rashford has been apparently training well. I know Asensio has apparently been training well. And I think he'll leave them on the bench to kind of have a bit of an impact. I actually think he might go with John McGinn on that right-hand side tomorrow and just try and kind of limit Spurs' threat out wide. Whether Spurs go with Son or more out there, I'll kind of come on to in a minute. But when Spurs have been able to actually turn the ball over in midfield against Villa, and I think that's why Sarr has had brilliant games against Villa in the past. Brilliant games. Last season at Villa Park, he was absolutely excellent. I know we're not seeing the best version of Sarr right now. And in the home game, he was absolutely fantastic, especially in that second half. It just became a dual-winning machine. And if he can kind of match the intensity in the ground covered of the likes of Onana and Rodgers, then Spurs have got a chance, because you're going to need someone in there to nip the ball back to allow Gray and Bergvall to get Tottenham out and up the pitch. Because Sarr will do that with his legs, but Bergvall, you need that player to be press resistant. Villa are going to be hungry. They're going to be at it. Rodgers is a great presser. Ramsey is a great presser, obviously, as well. And they will get high and they will get in Spurs' face. But that will naturally leave that space in behind. And Villa have had that high line exploited by Spurs in the past. Will they play in a bit more of a deeper block consistently tomorrow and allow Spurs to come onto them, kind of lure them in a little bit? I think this is where Tell is going to be really important. Obviously, Tell is... I said it in my video, go and watch it, and kind of explaining why I think Tell could be a great fit for Spurs. And in terms of what I think he's going to be in the long run, I think he is going to develop into a 9, and I think he's going to have to play there because we've obviously got no Richarlison. Scarlett is cup tied, I believe, in this game. Obviously no Will Lancashire anymore and no Solanke just yet. But we're going to need someone who creates that little bit of doubt getting in behind that Villa back line, and also someone that can drag those centre-backs out as well. One thing I did like about Tell in that, you know, obviously hard to judge cameo against Liverpool was that, one, he's got a real technical assurance about him, especially with his back to goal. There were quite a few times where he'd kind of actually be able to drag those centre-backs out a little bit and then spin. I think he's got that in his game, whereas Richarlison, I think, is sometimes lazy to get back from being offside. I think we saw that in the first half, and that sharpness just really isn't there with Richie. So Tell's got that, and I think Tell is going to be, bear in mind they're playing a midfielder at centre half. How does that then affect your choice in terms of your wingers? Because I think I'm wanting to see Mikey Moore on the pitch tomorrow. Kulusevski, I think, needs that rest. I really think he does. Do you put Kulusevski in midfield potentially just to have that physical battle in there with Rodgers and Onana and Tielemans? Kulusevski just looks really worn out at the moment, so I'd actually be tempted to leave Kulusevski on the bench as your game-changing option potentially, because Spurs haven't got a lot of them. Spurs haven't got any at the moment. You know, no Richarlison, no Solanke, no Johnson yet, no Odebear yet. I think Spurs have got to factor that in, and I would actually be tempted to leave Decky on the bench. And because, even though Son, I think, has been really struggling, like really, really struggling, I think just because you have got more of striker right now who gives that element of doubt, potentially intel from a very short, cameo against Liverpool. He maybe just has got that readiness, or has kind of got that busyness in his game that will give that makeshift back four something to worry about a little bit if they do step up. I think he's got good movement. I think he's sharp. He's match fit. And I think he's going to have to play down the middle anyway. But it's more about how that affects your choices out wide. And I think it could potentially be you give Son a go from the start. You see if he can exploit that space against a fullback in Garcia that's new to the league. Obviously, they are going to double up potentially down these sides. When Spurs do have the ball, they will kind of go into that deeper block and then try and spring on transition and get forward with the legs of Onana, Rodgers, Ramsey, brilliant players in transition and brilliant players carrying the ball. So we know that they are going to try and squeeze like this a little bit. And Teller's going to have a lot of work to do in terms of like giving Bergvall, like if you go back to this and imagine Tellers, Solanke and Maddison as Bergvall there in terms of your playmaker who can actually be creative and unlock the door, Tell's going to have to do a lot of good work with his back to goal to kind of create pockets of space for Bergvall to affect the play-in. I also would like to see more out there as well, but I just think maybe you gamble and hope that Sonny can get in behind a little bit with Villa kind of pushing up. But in hindsight, on the other hand, maybe you keep Son on the bench if the game gets a little bit more open and bring him on when he's a bit fresher and trust more to kind of be the one that can create from out wide. Because I think one thing we've seen with Mikey quite a lot is that he puts doubt into defenders, and Sonny's not doing that at the moment. And if you think about Sonny's position here on this screen, like when I did the preview for Villa before, Mikey Moore might get quite a lot of opportunities to whip in crosses from deeper positions from out wide. And I think that's one thing that he's actually really got. That is a real strength in his game. And I think it might be the kind of game to just unleash him from the start. And then if the game does become a little bit more stretched, that's when you bring a fresher Sonny on. And just gamble on the fact that Kulusevski, all right, he's not going to be able to give you 110%. He'll try, but I think he's running on empty. I think it might be the one to rest Sonny. And just trust more and trust Spence down that side to just try and cause some problems. Spence with those kind of underlapping runs as well, and kind of having a little bit more of a physical presence when he does invert as well, when Villa do try to turn it over, and you back him to have the recovery to go the other way. I also think Porro at right back, obviously with that high line, potentially kind of dinking balls in over the top as the game kind of goes on and does open up a little bit more. But I think more when they kind of do go into these blocks is going to be a lot more effective than Sonny. And I think also Kulusevski potentially as well, kind of getting those crosses in from out wide, from deeper positions, and Porro as well. So I would personally go with that. Trust Gray as that 6. It's going to be hard for him, but you've got the legs in there with Sarr to kind of help cover the ground and try and stop the likes of Onana and stop the likes of Tielemans from playing. You've got Bergvall who's got legs, who is fresh, who is brave, who is hungry. I think it's the game to chuck him in. Look, it's going to be tough. It is going to be really tough for Spurs. As that game gets a little bit more stretched as well, they've got Rashford to come on. They've got Bailey to come on. They've got Asensio to come on to create that little bit. I think they probably set up a little bit more functional from the start and don't chuck those new lads in. And I think this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a Villa team try to kind of stop Tottenham and really dig in and then try and hit us on the break with Ramsey in behind, Marlon kind of floating, Rodgers running beyond him, kind of Marlon running into these sort of channels, dragging Danso out wide and leaving space for Rodgers to kind of get in here. It's going to be really tough for Spurs tomorrow, but despite how bad things are at the moment, Ange has had a decent record against Emery, and I think that's kind of the hope that you have to take into this game. There's not a lot to be hopeful about right now, but hopefully we can see this kind of new blood in this forward line in terms of bringing more in. Tell as well from the start up front, what can he do? Can he stretch that defence, that makeshift defence? Can he drag Kamara into channels where he doesn't necessarily want to be? As a midfielder playing at centre-half, leave that space for Kulusevski to kind of come inside, affect the game a little bit more by dragging those centre-backs out wide. More kind of coming in, creating off the left, doubling up with Spence, trying to combine, get crosses in from deep and put the ball in the box for Tell as a bit more of a presence. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think we should do in the comments below. We'll be chatting on Monday after the game. Hopefully Spurs will be through to the 5th round of the FA Cup. And yeah, give me score predictions as well. And up the Spurs. Nice one.